Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be walking you through my workflow between Ableton and Pro Tools. Let's get into it. First off, let me start by saying that all the sessions you're going to be looking at are actually screenshots. Flipping back and forth between Ableton and Pro Tools for the purposes of this video would take a bit too long to record this video. And also, we're not going to be listening to any of this. This is actually an unreleased track that I'm working on with Tennis Rodman from down south. I'll leave a link in the description so you can go check out some of his music. Essentially, we're not going to be listening, but you can still get my workflow based on, the visually from these sessions. So essentially, I like to start off producing in Ableton. It's the DAW that I started out just in general with. It was my first ever real DAW. So it's one of the DAWs that I really know inside and out, or at least I feel like I do. So I like to not be hindered by the things that I might not know in Logic or the things that I might not know in Pro Tools. And I really like to just get the ideas out there as they come. So Ableton's just my go-to for that reason. I prefer the way Pro Tools sounds, but I'm just faster in Ableton. If I'm producing in the room with an artist and they're like, oh, actually the bass should do this and the drums could be a little like this, I know how to find my samples. I know how to use the Ableton effects in conjunction with my own effects. And it's just, I'm going to get a quicker and more accurate result for both me and the artist if I work in Ableton rather than trying to really push myself to produce in Pro Tools with them in the room. So essentially the session we have open is the beat that I started out with. So what you're looking at is like really the raw output from my brain onto Ableton. And you can see here, if I scroll up here, all these, it's very disorganized. This is actually a week or two before I actually created my production template. So you'll see later on in the video that I actually go back and restructure it how I like to print my stems and organize my mix sessions. And this actually inspired me to start my my production template. If you look over here on the side at all the tracks, you can't really tell what everything is based on its name. Like Abyss Kit kind of sounds like drum. These are called audio still. Juno, all right, cool, that's a synth, but what is it doing next to my drums? And then there's a couple of like crashes and another audio track. It's a mess. It really is a mess. Again, just because I was working so fast, I just wanted to get this out onto the canvas. I wasn't really paying attention to how structured and organized my session was. But I got a good enough idea out, got approval from the artist. And, we sat around, we worked on it a little bit together. So once I've finished producing the beat and I'm happy with it, and more importantly, the artist feels like they're vibing with it and they're ready to record their vocals to it, I go ahead and print an instrumental of this and I import it into a Pro Tools session. I import it to my vocal tracking template. So once I have it in Pro Tools, I just use the instrumental to track the vocals to, because we've already agreed this is good enough to record the vocals to. We're essentially just going to create a new demo, right? But I don't like to say that I'm recording demo vocals or scratch vocals, right? I don't think that there is a way to record scratch vocals. You should just be recording vocals. And saying that they're scratch or demo vocals really isn't an excuse to be like, oh, well, yeah, I clipped, but it's fine. Like, scratch vocals. No, like, if I can get vocals that we can use in the final cut, why not just record like that from the beginning? But that being said, what I plan on doing once I have the instrumental in Pro Tools is recording a brand new vocal tracks, right? So there may be a time where the artist is like, all right, do a beat drop right before the chorus. All right, cool. So I'll, go in here and I'll do a little beat drop and I'll, do a reverse right here. Okay, great. I'll just cut the instrumental and do a little reverse here. In this way, we're kind of focusing on like larger edits that can be done to the instrumental, and we're not being bogged down by, that's not the right snare sample and all that stuff. Like, this is just getting like new vocals for me to go back into Ableton with and finish producing the beat, right? So the beat's not finished. I'm not going to mix these vocals to this instrumental. What I'm going to do is record all these vocals, and then I'm going to print an acapella of these vocals, bring them back into Ableton, and finish producing the beat. So I'm going to go ahead and mute my instrumental, and then use bounce monitor left right. So all my vocals are routed out of monitor left right. And that's going to give me just, again, like a stereo acapella that I've found my balances and I've done all my effects and there's auto-tune and all this stuff. And the vocals are the way that the artist wants the vocals to sound, more or less, before mixing. So I bounce my acapella and I import that again back into Ableton. So this is the session after I've finished tracking the vocals with the artist, and I've imported the acapella to Ableton. So if we look at the session where it started in Ableton. You can see it's very messy, it's very cluttered. I can't really tell what the instruments are or what's doing what and where and why. But if we go down to after I've imported the acapella is down here, right at the bottom of the session. And I can tell, okay, drums original. So in the original session, the Abyss kit was just one drum kit, right? It was just, all my kicks, my hi-hats, my snares, it was all on one track. But in this new session, I've gone ahead and just split everything out. What I like to do is duplicate this over and over and over again for each drum that I'm using in the kit, and I'll just solo the kick, then I'll solo the snare, then I'll solo the rim. Or you can also do the thing where you option drag the instruments onto different tracks. That's fine too. But I like to keep a copy of my original drums printed as one stereo file. Because maybe when I'm mixing, I like the balance that I got. I don't really need to change anything. Or if the compressor's not hitting the right way or something like that, I can always go back and say, you know what, I'm going to go back and use the drums original. But just to be as flexible as possible, I've separated out all the drums. More importantly, I've named all of my tracks. I've ordered them in the way that I like to mix my song, right? So because of the way that Pro Tools imports files, it imports them alphabetically and by number order. So once I import these into Pro Tools, all my tracks are going to be laid out in the order that I like to mix them. So drums, then bass, then synth, then keys, then sound effects and whooshes and cymbals and stuff like that, then vocals. Also importantly, these colors match my mix template. So in Pro Tools, and now my production template actually matches this, and I can show you guys what that looks like later. In Pro Tools, my drums are always baby blue, and my bass is always brown, and my synths are always green. So in this way, let's say we're back in Pro Tools and, the artist changed his mind. You know what? That snare, it isn't working. Let's find a different snare sound. All right, cool, great. Snare is going to be right underneath my kick in a baby blue track. I'm not even looking at the thing, but that's where it is, right underneath the kick, baby blue track. In both places, in Pro Tools and in Ableton. It keeps both sides of my mind in the same world, the production side and the mixing side and the recording side, and everything stays consistent so that I can stay consistent in my workflow. So here, all those things that the artist was telling me during the vocal tracking, make that beat drop, do the reverse this and okay, and then we're going to add a reverb on that delay synth thing, and all that's being taken care of in this session. So once we've reached another point where, all right, yeah, this is really slapping. All right, we're getting to the finish line here. I like to print stems from Ableton, and I bring those stems into the Pro Tools vocal tracking session to replace the instrumental. So what I do is I select all of the tracks, and the way that I like to print stems is a little. I like to commit as much stuff as I can, because again, we've been working on this for a while now. If I have two snares going to a group, I don't want the smaller snare and the bigger snare, or I don't want each individual layer. I've already worked so hard probably in the session. I mean, look at all these effects that I have going on this channel here. I've already put in the work and the time to blend those. I don't want to mess with that blend down the road in Pro Tools, right? So if things are grouped, what I'm going to do is essentially just bounce the group stem. You can see here, sample 1. That's like a melody loop of strings and piano that I've duped and done all this stuff to. There's no reason for me to mess with that blend later. I think that's 3 or 4 tracks, right? So I'm just going to print one just sample stem. That way I can mess with the balance of the sample stem in relation to the rest of my track and not have to worry about the balance of 4 or 5 tracks in relation to the rest of my song. So I select all my tracks, and then I select print region. So I make a little loop from the start of the song to the end of the song, including the tail. Now you'll notice something a little bit crazy here. If we go back to the top, when I first started this beat, it starts at beat 1, bar 1. Most songs would start at beat 1, bar 1. Why not? I mean, that's where songs start. Ableton has this nasty habit of cutting off the first 4 samples of a file for some reason. I don't know why they do that. Basically, when you start at a print or a bounce in Ableton, the beginning of it just always gets... I have a song out that that they did that to my master.
But not only was it on the master, it was on the stem that I printed, and then it was on the mix print, and then it was on the master that I printed. So I basically cut off like 15 samples from my first kick drum, and the song entered.
It's annoying. It just enters with half a kick drum, and I don't know why they do that. So to counteract that, I go back and I insert all this lead time. This way, if it's cutting off any samples, it's in empty space, and I'm not going to be missing any parts of my waveform or any information that's crucial to the song. So my print region is selected. My tracks are selected. I hit Shift-Command-R, and we get the export window. I like to export at the sample rate that I recorded my vocals at, or what I've been producing at so far. Luckily, they were both at 44.1, because I was smart enough to just think ahead and say, we're going to do this at 44.1. Keep it easy. Bit depth, I keep it 24. There's really no reason to do any lower resolution than 24-bit unless you're making like lo-fi music and you're going for that lack of resolution, but otherwise 24-bit standard. So selected tracks only, my desired sample rate or the sample rate that I'll be working at for the song, and the bit depth 24. I go ahead and export these stems and I import them to the Pro Tools session where I've recorded all the vocals and I remove my instrumental track. So now the stems are replacing the instrumental. This way, going back to when we were first recording the vocals, if the artist is like, you know what, let's, the snare has to come down a little bit so this vocal can come out and all this stuff. Now I have the freedom to do that because all the tracks are separated and split out, right? So I have my kick, my drums, all my layers are separated, all my basses are separated, all my synths are separated, and all the vocals are where I recorded them in the track. And, you'll see here that I've compensated for that time that I inserted in Ableton. So now everything lines up. So I basically inserted time on the vocals that I recorded, and then I imported the stems, so you can see here that the stems start with that time, and the vocals actually got pushed back so that they're all in time with each other. Now, like I said, now I have the freedom to start, getting crazy with things. All right, this bass is a little too wild. Let's just tuck it back a little bit and all this stuff. So I keep everything going out 1-2, right? I have all my instruments sending out 1-2. And I have all of my vocals sending out 1-2, or in this case, monitor left, right. In this way, let's say, you know what, this needs like an ad-lib right here. This needs a background vocal right here. I just bring my record track back that's going out monitor left, right, and he can record whatever he wants or she wants on top of the stuff that I'm trying to do, and they'll be going out monitor left, right. This master fader is just a byproduct. This is the end of my session. This is normally not here, but in this way they can record over all the stuff that I'm doing without latency, or I'll just be giving them like a monitor off my interface. So essentially, this is where I'm going to be finalizing the production for this track. I like to start in Ableton because that's where I'm fastest and I can get the ideas out, but we're not in necessarily ideas territory anymore at this point in my workflow. What I'm really doing is fine-tuning the production. I'm adding, distortion to things that need distortion. I'm adding delays to things that need delay. I'm adding, doing subtle EQ moves and all this stuff to make the song feel its best and to finalize the production. I'm also, adding vocal effects and creating moments out of the stuff that I already have. So once we finalize the beat production and once we finalized all the vocals, I go ahead and I import my mix template, which looks like this. Forgive me, some of this stuff is like I said, it's unreleased, so I had to block out some clip names and some track names and all this stuff, but you'll get the gist. So essentially, the production's finished, I've imported my mix template, and now I can start routing things. You can see here, my drums are all being routed to my drum group, and my bass is being routed to my bass group. And then this is all going to my mix bus. And essentially everything is routed where I want it to be routed. My vocals are below this, and now I'm in the space of, I'm ready to mix this song. I'm not in production territory anymore. We produced a song in Ableton, we've recorded the vocals, and now it's time for me to get less creative and more technical and really start to mix the song down. So essentially, just to recap, everything that I do when it comes to producing a song from start to finish, I start the beat in Ableton. I get my ideas out. I'm not necessarily worried about being organized. I'm just getting the ideas out. We're making the sketch of the song. Once the sketch is done, I import it into Pro Tools, and we do vocal tracking for the outline of the song. Once that's complete, I print the acapella, and I bring that back into Ableton. I finish, splitting things out. I organize the session, do some tweaks, any of these like beat drops or delay moments or reverses, any stuff like that. That all gets done here in this session. Once we're happy with that, I print the stems individually and I import the stems into Pro Tools again. So now my stems are in Pro Tools. I finalize the production here. We record any additional vocals. We do any additional tweaks. I do the ultimate final cut of the song in Pro Tools. And once that's finished, I import my mix template. It seems a little bit, back and forth, but this is the method that has really allowed me to both grow as a producer and provide the best results for people that I work with and myself. If the track doesn't have vocals, and we're dealing with just like one of my dance tracks, I essentially just do the first couple steps, and instead of doing the acapella back and forth, I'll just print the stems and go right into my mix template. It's that simple. I hope you guys learned something. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any tips or comments on my workflow and, maybe some suggestions on how you do your work, and, I'm open to talk about it. This isn't the way to produce a song. This is just my way of producing a song. And I'm always open to hear your ideas and the way that you guys work. Feel free to leave some comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time.